Second. Right then. Good evening, everybody. How's it going? Let me just turn off my own computer there. Thanks very much for joining me on this webinar. For everybody on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and for anybody who's joining on Zoom as well, thank you so much for joining me at this webinar tonight. I'm going to make it worth your while, give you some really good data that's going to help you in your life to lift yourself out of those blues, the blues that we run into very regularly, all of us, whether it's a temporary or a long-term basis. So we're going to give you some basics tonight on that, okay? So my name is Vincent Kelly. You might have seen me on the ad. Obviously, I'm there and you can click the thing and here I am. So if you want to, and you want to put a little shout out to where you're from, your country, your city, pop it into the chat on any of those platforms on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube or Zoom, and it will come around to me. I'll have the message here directly in front of me, okay? Now, just to give you an idea about this particular webinar, it's a practical webinar. So during the webinar, I might ask you to do some exercises, and I'd like you to do them on your own at home. And also, if you can, send me in some feedback. I like to see the odd comment coming in now and again to see when people are actually participating in the webinar, so I can actually see you there and get some feedback, okay? Now, my webinar tonight is based on this book called Dianetics. It means through the mind. Dia means through, and netics means the mind, through the mind. And it was written by this gentleman. His name is L. Ron Hubbard. Now, people sometimes ask me, is this the same thing as Scientology, or is it connected to Scientology? The answer is yes, it is connected to Scientology. Scientology is a later subject developed by the same gentleman, and that word means a study of knowledge. And if you have any questions about the connection between the two, you can always send us a little message on the chat or put your little comment in. That's completely fine, and we'd be happy to give you the data. All right. So the promise here tonight is to show you what you need to do to lift yourself out of the blues. I'm going to go over a couple of basics that you may or may not already be familiar with, and then we're going to get into the real root of the problem. That's the channel that we're going on tonight. Do stay around till the end, because at the very end of the webinar, I have a special offer that I want to show you to kind of encourage you to kind of keep going and keep improving yourself, because that's what this is all about. It's not just about giving you a 2-minute or a 30-minute blast of motivation, but give you some more of a long-term strategy for handling your blues and keeping yourself on a better frame and a better level. Okay, and also, while you're watching this webinar, turn off the TV if you can. Or if there's somebody else watching TV in the same room, stick in your headphones and just get your full attention on this webinar, because I really want this data to arrive, so that you actually get the information that is going to be delivered here tonight, okay? So just, if you have the TV on, put the TV, well, I'm not going to ask you to put the TV on silent, but, like, I don't know, you could turn it off, or just stick in your headphones and just listen to me, so that you've got my full, you're just listening to me. And if the kids are running around, I don't know, give them a piece of fruit or something. I don't know. How to handle kids in 3 easy steps. What do you do? If the dog and cat are running around, well then, I don't know. Put them on your lap and rub them down. That usually settles dogs and cats. Okay, so again, stay until the end. I've got some little offer for you at the very end for anybody who stays until the end, okay? As for who I am, I have been studying this subject and practicing since 1992, 1993. I came across this subject in Germany when I was traveling. I was doing personnel management as part of a business studies degree course in Dublin. But I was looking for something else. I was looking for something that was really effective at actually helping people to, to restore their personalities, to improve themselves, to help themselves. I came across this in Munich in the early 90s, and I've been promoting this, doing webinars and seminars, and I'm delivering this counseling on a one-to-one basis for over 25 years. And the reason I've stuck with it for so long is because it works. And there's no other reason. It works. And I think what I'm going to go over with you tonight is going to help you to make sense of it as well, so that you can see for yourself how it all works. Okay? Now, obviously, this webinar is about helping a person to come out of the blues. Okay? And I'm not just going to tell you this webinar that I've never hit those myself. Okay? We all hit the blues sometimes. Even if your favorite team loses a football match, you can sink down for days and be really unhappy. If you lose your job, if you have an argument with your spouse, if you fail at a job interview, you know, it's not like the word blues is something that only a certain group of people have. The blues is something that we're all subject to. But the difference between each person is, how do you get yourself out of it? So for me, when it's happened to me, and when it does happen and I do hit a barrier and I sink down a bit, these days it doesn't take me long to come back out of it. Very, very quickly. But for a lot of people, it takes a long, long time. Now, when it happens to me, or when it has happened to me in the past, it has really affected my motivation, my general happiness, my relationships with people, because I'm just not interested in talking to people, my ability to do an effective job, because, you know, the morale goes down and you're just not interested. Okay, so before we begin on this webinar, before I launch into the tools that you can use on an immediate basis, what I'd like to ask you to do as a first exercise on the webinar, remember I told you it was a little practical webinar, I might ask you for examples, and also anybody who's on Zoom there, you can pop in your examples. I'd like to ask you your first webinar question. The first question is, what is it in your life that you want to improve, that you feel is keeping you stuck in that sadness? Is it just general sadness? Is it just general you can't get yourself going? Is it relationship? Is it to do with your work? So if you could please write down in the comment section or into the chat on Zoom, what is the thing that you want to improve? Because I want to tailor this webinar to basically include as many people as possible, so that each one of you are getting benefit from it and getting something useful out of this webinar. So if you don't mind, take a moment to think of what you would like to improve and pop it into the chat or pop it into the comments, and I'll be able to see them coming along here, and that would be absolutely great if you could. Okay, so just take a moment to do that. I just want to get your reason for being here. A lot of people log on to the webinar because they've got general interest. Other people have more specific things to handle. And look, you don't have to. You can pop your message into the chat. I'd like to see it, to see what is it that you want to improve. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of seconds, because I'm a very impatient man, to pop your message into the chat or into the comments, and I'll be able to see it. What would you like to get out of this webinar? Why are you here? If anybody wants to, and hello to Aoife, Mandeep, Christina, and Vijay who's joined us. I can see you guys on Zoom. I just can't see everybody on the other platforms because I've got somebody keeping an eye on those. But hello, guys. Good to have you on board. And if you have any questions on Zoom, you can always pop them into the chat with me as we are going along. Okay, so let's launch straight into it. The first thing we're going to go over, and I'm going to give you a couple of little tools, are just some very simple basics that you may already know, but which are worth reminding you of. Okay, so we're looking at the source of the blues. Okay, the source of the blues. Now look, I am not going to turn this into a whole motivation webinar. Okay, let me just send a message there to get something here. 1 second. Okay. I'm not going to turn this into a whole motivation speech, because you can watch those on Facebook till the cows come home, you know. Somebody going, come on, guys, you need to do it. Get yourself going. Come on. Yay. Yeah, just put a goal there. It's all very much easier said than done. So I'm not going to get into it. I'm just going to go over very briefly some basics. And then I'm going to go over the meat and bones. In other words, why it is that you get stuck in the blues. Why it is they get stuck in this, this feeling that you can't motivate yourself, or you're just unhappy. Okay? And by the way, I didn't get any comments in yet, so if anybody wants to put in comments, and I would love to see your comments, can you pop them in there so I can just see what is the area of this that's affecting you the most? All right? So, the first thing we're going to have a look at is failures. Okay? As I mentioned, even when you're playing a game of football, if you fail to win the match, it can really sink you down. But that also applies to different areas of life, okay? You have a goal in your life, you wanted to achieve the goal, okay? And the barrier was just too big. So for example, you wanted to get into a stable relationship, but every relationship you've gotten into has fallen apart. The barrier was just too big, or you didn't know how to get around it, or you didn't know how to get over it. Or you were trying to lose weight, and no matter what you tried, you starved yourself for weeks, and you became like 2 stone lighter, but then you put it back on the next week. Or maybe you were wanting to open up your own business, and you had this great idea that you wanted to become a jeweler, or you wanted to open up a farm, an organic farm, and the barrier was too great. You ran out of money. You didn't quite get that, okay? So this is the very first thing that happens, is the person runs into that wall, and we've all run into it. And when you hit that wall, something kicks in, which I'm going to go into in the second part of the webinar. There is a part of your mind that kicks in when those failures occur, which prevent you from being able to pursue them, okay? But the tip here is when that barrier is, when you are hitting that barrier, okay, you just write down one thing. What can I do about it? Okay? What can I do about it? Now, there's an actual, on all of these points here, as I'm just going to be touching on them very briefly, there's actually a course that we do on each one of these little points that I'm going to go over with you. So I'm really just touching off these right now. I'm not even giving you the full stuff here. But the basic tip here is, when you do have a failure, just look at, okay, what can I do about this? What is it that I can do? Don't quite look at the problem. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't. Just look at what you can do. All right? And then when you look at you can do and then do it, something else is going to become visible to you. Right? So even if you had a failure on a relationship, and let me just see. Okay, so I've got a few on there. Ability, and thank you very much, folks, for participating. Ability to work, confidence at work. Let me just write these down so I remember them. Yeah. Okay, work. And then relationship. Yeah. Okay. So you have a goal in a relationship, the barrier is too big, you sink down. You have a goal in work, the barrier is too big, you're not getting that promotion, you sink down. Okay? And the point here is just to look at what you can do, even if it's just a small thing, and then do that. And then look at it again. What else can I do? Okay? So that's the first thing, failures. And it's just to bring this to your attention. Look, you're already aware of this. I know you are. What I'm going to go over in the second part of this is going to really uproot the whole thing for you. Okay? So the next thing we're going to have a look at here, and this is very important. This is basically number 2, which is upsets. Okay? With people. Okay, now, cats and dogs are obviously lovely creatures to have around. Animals and plants and trees, and it's all, nature is great. Okay? And some people prefer having cats around than having human beings. And some people prefer to have dogs around than have human beings. Some people prefer to just live in nature, far away from people, and not have anything to do with anybody. The problem, and there's nothing wrong with these extra things, but the problem is life is not lived on your own. Life is lived with people. Okay? Life is lived with people. We are not meant to be on our own. If you take away these people, what kicks in is loneliness. Okay? So it is very important that if you have an upset with somebody that you care about, that it gets addressed. So if you have an upset with somebody in your life, remember, these people are part of your life. And if there's something not functioning with a person that you care about, that is, you can see it as part of you as well. So part of you is not functioning, and you'll know there's something wrong. You won't feel good because there's an upset here that you need to handle. It's not that just because somebody is threatening you or being nasty to you that you have to be real nicey to them. But if there's an upset or disagreement, it's important to address it. Okay? So this is a big factor, because if you have an argument with your mother, for example, and you storm out of the house and you think that's fine, I'm not going to talk to her ever again. Look, if you really care about her and if you cared about her, that's going to sit there with you and it is going to affect your happiness. Now, again, there is a whole course on how to improve relationships with others, which we do as well. This is just a tiny segment. The one little tip on this one I'm just going to give you is, if you have this, the entry point into this relationship and how to repair it is communication. Okay. Oh, Vincent, I know that already. I know you do. I know you do. But it's important to mention it. Communication. Now, if you're not up to sitting down with the person, confronting them head on, you can at least send them a message. You can at least send them a birthday card or a Christmas card. You can at least, I don't know, like something that they are sharing on Facebook, just to get the communication flow going again. So, for example, if there's you and there's Mary, and you have had an argument about apples, and she's not talking to you because you don't like apples, and you're not talking to her because she doesn't like pears, all right? So you've got this big disagreement with something. Well, when you're communicating, just communicate about something else. Don't get into this just yet. Just communicate about something else, and then you can gradually approach, if you really need to, this aspect of apples and pears, okay? So that's the first thing. That's the second thing. Upsets with people. Very important to handle just that. Okay, next one. Okay, and now the next one also has to do with people. And I touch on this in almost every webinar. Is suppression. Okay? Now, suppression basically means you want to move in a very positive direction. You want to improve your life. You want to go forward and you want to achieve success. Okay? But you will have people who basically want to put you down and don't want to see you succeed. And will try sometimes, and I'm not saying everybody, but it does happen, will try directly or indirectly to make you doubt yourself. So, for example, if you know what, I am going to definitely start an orchard in my back garden. I've got a big back garden and I'm gonna grow some apple trees. And that's your goal. Okay? And you're working away on that. And this person doesn't want to see you happy, doesn't want to see you successful selling your own apples. And so in an underhanded way will tell you, oh look, that's a useless thing to get into. What about all the flies and this and the that and the sprays? Oh, it's terrible. Oh, you wouldn't be any good at that anyway. So what would you know about apples? Sure, you know nothing about farming. I would suggest you just stick with the knitting. So in other words, you can run into people who can undermine your decisions and sometimes as a friend tell you how much they care about you and why it is that you should stay at home and do nothing. So it's very important to watch out for people who directly or indirectly are making you continuously doubt yourself. Because when you start doubting yourself, that blues is going to start kicking in. All right? Again, there's a whole course on this. I just wanted to touch off it for you there now. All right? And the next one is just general. Okay? And this is general low morale. General low morale. Okay? Now, I'm going to go into the reasons for this now in a minute. But if you are in a situation where you can't get yourself out of the blues, or you can't get yourself, motivated or whatever, there's a couple of basics to know about and something that you need to keep in, and that is production. Number one is production. And what I mean by production is actually doing things that are constructive and exchangeable. Okay, so for example, if you're sitting at home and you can't motivate yourself all week to do anything except press Netflix, okay, well, one thing you could do is maybe sweep the kitchen floor. All right, that's production. Or I didn't know, go to work for a day. Production, produce something, clean the banisters, take the dog for a walk, do something. And the more of those production things that you do, the more your morale is going to raise higher and higher. And the second one is take a walk. Okay, now look, people do this all the time, and it's a natural thing to do. And in fact, there's a booklet that I'm going to go over with you at the end. It's part of the offer. I'm going to be showing you solutions for a dangerous environment. There's loads of little tools that you can use to be able to help you to kind of come out of it, out of the blues. They are more so, well, not quick fixes, but they are very useful if you do hit it, to kind of get you out of it quickly, and something that you can use to help somebody else as well. Okay, so take a walk around the block, look at things until you feel refreshed. And again, there's a little course that we do on this, which will give you more data about. But there's a couple of things. Get yourself productive, get yourself doing things, and take a walk. Okay, and so these are just general basic points. Okay, so now we're going to go into the main root of the problem. Okay. What I've told you is all very fine in theory, and you might say, Vincent, look, I know all of that. I tried all of that. It's all fine for a day or two, and then I just sink back down again. Now we're going to go into exactly why it is that you sink down again and again. Why it is that you can't shake it, and what to do about that. And this is not just a quick fix. This is not just a quick 2-minute thing that I put on the board here. It takes a bit of work and a bit of time, but I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. Okay, so there's you, and in your life you have goals. Okay, you have things that you want to achieve, and you have a past. Okay, so that's your past, and this is your future. Okay, so we all have goals. Maybe you want to get a promotion in work. Maybe you just want to do well in work. Maybe you want to get yourself into a stable relationship. Maybe you want to get married. Maybe you want to have kids. Maybe you just want to have a healthier body. But each one of us has goals that we are working on. Okay? Now, as you go through life, you store information. So let's say you're 20, and there's when you were 0, and there's when you're 10, 15 years of age, and 20, okay? As you're going through your life, you store up knowledge to help you to make decisions in relation to your life and your goals. The better information that you have and the more good experience you have, the more likely it is you are going to get your goals, okay? So in other words, if all this stuff is good and it's relevant and it's all in good shape, there's a really good chance that you're going to make the right decisions. Okay? So for example, if your goal is to get yourself into a stable relationship, and you've learned all about relationships, you've learned how to communicate with people, You've learned how to detect who is trustworthy and who is not. You've learned how to keep a relationship created. Then you're much more likely to pick out the correct partner and keep that relationship going. Same with a job, okay? If you want a promotion in your job, let's say you work in computers, you fix computers for a living, you've learned all about computers, but you've also learned about communication, you've learned about all the different scenarios that might come up in the future, you're much more likely to get this stuff here. Now, all this information that you have learned is stored in picture form. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you how this connects with the blues as well in a minute, because once you stop achieving those goals, and once you stop and you feel that the barriers are too great, you are going to hit those blues. So what I'm telling you is important because it does relate to your goals in life. Once you lose track of those goals, you sink down. Once those goals become more visible to you and you become more confident and more able in yourself, your morale is going to start rising. And I'm going to tell you exactly how that's done in a minute. Okay. So you have a complete record of everything that you have experienced. Now, in this subject, if any of you missed it earlier when I introduced this book, which I'm going to be telling you about at the end, Dianetics. In Dianetics, we call this the time track. Everything that has ever happened to you, everything that you have experienced is recorded on your time track. Okay? So that's the past and you've learned. Now, what should happen is that you learn on your time track, okay? And then you keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep learning, and trying to get yourself closer to that goal. So your time track is something that is in the past, but also something that you're moving along in the future. And this is a very exactly timed series of pictures. So these are pictures. So you store your information in pictures. And they are in a very exact sequence. Now, I would like you to do a little exercise on this before we continue, okay? Anybody on Zoom, if you've been able to do this successfully, let me know with a yes or a thumbs up, and that would be great. For anybody on the other platforms, if you're able to do this exercise, you can send a little comment in just going, yes, okay? So here's what I want you to do, okay? I want you to try and remember, and you can close your eyes if you want to, the most recent happy moment in your life. Or a recent happy moment. Go ahead. All right. Now, I want you to find an earlier happy moment in your life. See if you can remember it. All right, and I hope I gave you enough time. Now, I want you to remember the earliest possible time that you can remember when you were happy. It was a happy moment. Okay, now the question is, who was able to do that? Were you able to do that? And could you get some things? You can give me a yes or a no or a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whatever you like. Anybody able to do that? Well, if you were, please pop it into the comments. The reason I wanted to show you that is because your time track is in exact sequence, okay? And you're continuously recording things and you're carrying that forward with you into the future to help you with your goals and your dreams in life so that you can stay motivated, so that you can stay, I don't know, dreamy, okay? The biggest problem with people when they get stuck in the blues is this. I'll take the smile away here because it's going to reduce the smile. Somebody with the blues doesn't have a smile, really. Okay? The biggest problem is that the person is no longer moving along the time track in the future, really. Their attention is stuck in the past. In other words, something happened to you, or a series of things happened to you, which has you stuck in the past. Stuck on things that happened to you. And therefore not able to move on. What should happen is that you experience life and you're able to move on in the future with your full ability and your full enthusiasm. The problem is, half of your attention or more gets stuck in the past and you can't move on from it. So even though you're apparently living every day and you're trying to get along with life, even though you're trying to do that, half of your attention is not in the present. It's stuck in the past. Even though you don't want it there, you don't want to be constantly thinking about your past. You just want to move on in life. You don't want to be constantly worrying about the past and what happened to you and the losses and upsets that you've had. You just want to move forward, but it's very difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because there is a section of your mind, okay, which is not under your control and which causes you to get stuck in the past and keeps replaying old incidents over and over and over again, which affects your thinking, your positivity, your emotional well-being, and your actions. Now, in Dianetics, we have a name for this section of the mind, and we call it the reactive mind. It's called reactive because it is simply push button. In other words, somebody pushes a button and it creates a reaction. Now, what is this reactive mind? I'm going to tell you about. But I will tell you this. This is the most important thing to handle if you want to stably recover. Get your vitality back. Get your energy, get your ability back, get your happiness back. If you don't handle this, it is going to be hit and miss in the future. You will have times you'll be doing great, and then you sink down and get stuck for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, maybe a couple of years. This part of your mind keeps you stuck in the past so that you can't move forward. So for example, if you were in a bad relationship, let's say you were going out with somebody and you got out with them for 5 years and they left you for your best friend, okay? That upset gets stored in here. In the reactive mind, it basically stores moments of pain. So if you lost a boyfriend and you were together for 5 years, that gets stored here. So what happens is, every time you try to get into a new relationship, okay, and it seems like this is the ideal relationship, it's all going to work out perfectly. You're going out with each other for a few weeks, you have your first argument, okay, and so forth. Something about this person, if there's enough similarity between this new person and the person who left you, in any way, it could be any series of combinations, that new guy can trigger off this past upset. So even though you're with this guy, only 50% of your attention is there, and 50% of it is back here. The reactive mind telling you almost every day, stay away, or don't do it, or don't trust the guy, or all men are the same, or it's not worth it, or you're going to lose, or whatever. Similarly, if let's say you lost somebody through death, okay? Let's say, I don't know, you lost your best friend in a motorbike accident, okay? And that was, I don't know, 10 years ago. And then you have a new friend in work, and you find out that your friend has a motorbike. Okay, now I'm attempting to, this is a motorbike, okay? That is a motorbike. There you go, okay? Vroom, vroom. There you go, that is an actual motorbike. I didn't go to art classes, as you can possibly determine. So you meet this new guy, a new friend in work, a really nice person, but they ride a motorbike, okay? Just the fact of them riding a motorbike can trigger off this stuff that is stored in your reactive mind, and it can cause you to have negative thoughts. Now, let me show you the relationship between negative thoughts and your emotion. So, there's a part of your mind that affects you without your consent. And it's a container of past bad experiences, like losses, upsets, arguments, these kind of things. When it gets triggered off, and in most cases, it gets triggered off without your consent and without your knowledge. All you know is, I don't know, there's something wrong with me. I don't feel great today. For the last 6 months, I'm just on a downer. I don't know why. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's my mother. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's the boss. Maybe it's the cold temperature. I don't know what. It could be anything. Because basically and simply, you don't know. And the reason you don't know is because the actual source of it is buried in this part of your mind, which is a package of past jumbled bad experiences. Not clearly laid out in the normal part of your mind, but in a jumbled package. Okay? So the more baggage you have, the more likely it is you're going to get triggered off again and again and again. And even though you take walks and you try to disconnect from people, you usually run into more and more triggers as you're going through life. So when this part of your mind gets triggered off, the first thing is it affects you in terms of thought. In other words, it affects your thinking. That's the number one thing. There's a lecture that this gentleman, L. Ron Hubbard, delivered, and he goes into when he was researching this area, and one of his comments, which I love and I repeat many times, is that thought is boss. Okay? Thought is boss. Thought is king. If your thinking is negative, it is going to affect your emotion and cause that emotion to be negative. If your thinking is naturally positive, your emotion is going to follow, and so is your action. Now, a lot of people do positive thinking. They try and force themselves to think positive, okay? Nothing wrong with that in theory, but it should be natural. It should be natural. But the reason why you're not thinking positive, and the reason why you're losing sight of your goals and your dreams, and the reason why you don't think you can do it, is mainly because of this reactive mind telling you so. So the first thing that your reactive mind does is it affects your thinking. The next thing is it affects your emotions, and then your effort or your actions. So if you are going into a job interview and you think, you know something, I can actually get this job. I am good enough. I know my stuff. I don't have to have this job, but I know I can get these guys to give me this job. I want it, and I can do it. If you go in there with that positive thinking aspect of it, which is your natural way of doing things, provided you studied for the interview. You know, you have to study as well. Let's be realistic. You have to know what you're doing. Your emotion is going to be one of interest and enthusiasm, and the interviewers are going to pick up that. And your actions and your efforts in that interview are going to be positive. On the other side of it, if you go into that interview and before you even go in, you think, oh no, I never get interviews. I'm not going to make it. I'm too sad. I'm only a fake. I'm always worrying. I'm too much of a worrier. I'm awfully stressed. If you go in thinking like that, your emotion is going to be something like anxiety or anger even, or maybe even, worry, these kind of things. That is going to show up in your interview and is going to affect your actions in that interview. And the same applies to relationships. The same applies to relationships with people that you're thinking on that relationship, you know what, I've studied about guys, I know I can determine who's a good guy and who's a bad guy, or a good girl or a bad girl. I can determine that. I know exactly what to do. I don't have to have this guy, but I know what to do. Okay? The emotion is going to be positive. The effort is going to be good. If, on the other hand, you go into that relationship, that new relationship, and you think, you know what? Oh, God, I hope this works out. Nothing ever works out for me. I wonder, is he going to see how many upsets I've had, or how is she going to see how bad I am? Blah, 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 blah. It's going to come across. All right? So this is the root. It affects your ability to handle relationships, which are the first 3 points I've gone over, right? It affects your ability to get your goals, handle relationships, handle people who suppress you, and just general morale. Okay? So that's basically it. Now, the problem with this part of your mind, got a message there. Thank you. I am going to go over the answer to that question in just a moment. If you don't handle this and you just leave it for another 10 years and say, sure, it'll be grand, like we do in Ireland all the time. We say, sure, look at it, it'll be fine. It'll be grand. It'll all work itself out. Don't worry about it for the moment. And we don't take any action. What happens is, if you don't handle it and you don't handle it fast, it grows. Why? Because every time you get a new upset, which is a trigger of something that happens in the past, that new upset gets stuck. Every new argument gets stuck. Every new time you have a panic attack, or you get nervous, or you get stressed out, gets stuck. So this reactive mind goes bigger and bigger and bigger, and the bigger it gets, and the longer that goes on, the harder it is to pull yourself out of the blue. So it's really vital to clear up this stuff. Now, moving on to the next question. How do you get rid of the storage? Okay? How do you get rid of this stuff? How do you clear this up so that it's all back in here where it should be? How do you clear all that up? Now, people have tried all sorts of different things. They've tried meditation. Nothing wrong with it. It helps you to relax and so forth. People try thinking positive. People try doing workshops. People try doing different types of counseling. All very fine, and I suppose helpful to some degree. But the problem is, what I have found is that they don't completely clear this stuff up. And this is why I have stuck with this subject and this subject only for the last 25 years, because it completely clears up that stuff for good. You heard it, for good. In other words, when you've done some Dianetics on this stuff, it's cleared up, it's done, it's handled. So let's go over how we do that, okay? Now, I'm just going to touch on the basic procedure, because I'm going to be telling you about this book in a few minutes, which gives you the full procedure and fully what you do. I'm just going to touch on the basic approach here, all right? And by the way, if anybody has any questions, please feel free, as one person did, to send them in. I'd be very happy to have a look at them. I can just check my computer here on all the different platforms. They'll come into me directly. So, how do we clear up the past? How do we clear up the things that happened to you so that you're not stuck in the past and you can move forward? How do we do that? So let me tell you the only way I know that this can be done. The only way that this can be done effectively. The only way. Other measures are, in my opinion, temporary. They might give you good benefit for weeks or months or whatever, but they're usually temporary. What I'm talking about here is handling it. If you are going to go to a doctor, okay, I'll tell you a story. One time, I put my hand in my bag, and it was, this is a terribly bad story, but it was a hairbrush in it, okay? And I stuck my hand in the hairbrush, and it got caught under my nail, and the pain under my nail was extremely excruciating, okay? So I got this hairbrush, what do you call it, those needles under my nail, and it really hurt extremely bad, and I was in absolute agony. So I go to the doctor, okay, in the hospital. Now, the doctor could have given me a painkiller, right? that would have covered it up and I would have felt fine for a few hours, maybe a day, and then take pills for the rest of the time. But what he did was, he told me to look over that way. He got a big scissors out and he cut, without me even looking, the top part of my nail off. Okay? And it was a bit of a shock, but it wasn't sore, but it gave me instant relief. Because what was happening was the nail, the pressure between the nail and the skin and the blood was causing an extreme amount of pain. Completely handled it, gone. Problem sorted, handled, dealt with. That's what I'm interested in. That's what Dianetics is about, is completely dealing with the source of the issue so that it's gone. Okay? None of this package it all over. Like, you know, if you go to some professionals these days and you have a problem, they're like, oh, really? What's the problem? Well, I'm stressed out all the time. Ooh, oh my God. Okay, so let's see. Let's pick from the list. You must have stress emotional disorder, or too much stress disorder, or worrying about your stress disorder. Fantastic. We'll take the middle one and we've a lovely pill to give you for that. So we'll pump you full of pills for the next 6 months and you'll be grand. Okay? Crazy stuff going on out there. Crazy stuff, in my opinion. Okay? Now, what we do in Dianetics is based on the most traditional method of helping another person, which has been with us since the beginning. Okay? And that is communication. And the therapy that I'm about to tell you is based communication. All right. I-O-N, yeah, that's right. Okay. The communication basis is there for this therapy. Now, what we do in Dianetics is a procedure called auditing. Okay? Auditing means the following. To listen comes from Latin audire, which means to listen, but also means to guide. Listen and guide. That's what auditing is. Now, if you think you can handle this on your own, I'm sorry to tell you the bad news. You need help to handle this. It is not possible to just clear up all this stuff on your own. You need to get assistance. I regret to tell you that bad news, but it's good news because what I'm going to tell you works. In Dianetics, the therapy is involved, let's just see, reprogramming. Yeah, got the message. Reprogramming. Again, people do this reprogramming and this thing with the brain and so forth. I don't, like, honestly, I haven't looked into it too much, but when you have something which clears the root, you don't really need to kind of readjust thoughts and, you know, because they come naturally positive and you're able to think clearly naturally once you've cleared up the root. So, auditing is done with two people. The person delivering the session is called an auditor, and an auditor is somebody who listens and guides. He is not a life coach. He is not there to tell the person what to think, what's wrong with them, give them life advice, any of that stuff. He is there to listen and to guide. That's the auditor. And he's got his Dianetics book in his hand. Book 3, chapter 5 has the exact procedure. The person receiving the auditing has their eyes closed, but they're wide awake. And this person, there's a name that we give them in Dianetics. It's called a pre-clear. Pre means before, and clear is basically the end result, which is what you are going for in Dianetics. And what clear means is just you back to yourself again, not stuck in the past. In a Dianetic session, the auditor is helping the pre-clear using the exact 10-step procedure explained in book 3, chapter 5 of this book. There's 3 books in this one book. Getting the person using the procedure to return to things that have happened to him in the past and going over that incident using the exact procedure until it is completely cleared up. If it doesn't clear up, it means there's an earlier similar one connected. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say if you your father passed away, okay? And you want to handle this loss with Dianetics because you haven't been the same since. And you've used the procedure of Dianetics, and okay, maybe it does handle, and you feel, you know what, I feel it's fine, I've handled it, I feel better now. I feel like I can move on, okay? But if it doesn't, it means there's an earlier similar. Maybe a couple of years prior to that, you lost your mother. And what happens is these losses get connected on the same chain. So what you're doing in a Dianetic session is you're going earlier and earlier on the chain until you get to the basic. The basic incident at the beginning of the chain. Now, it can sometimes happen when you're in a session. You just deal with that. You feel amazing. It's handled. Perfect. Move on. You're still going to have to handle these other ones as well. But in most Dianetic sessions, you are not just dealing with one incident. You are dealing with a chain of incidents. Because you want to get to that basic. And often, these things, as you go earlier, are buried. So you don't quite see them immediately because they're stuck underneath the surface. However, when you start peeling off these, and these are cleared up, these ones become visible. So what the auditor is doing in a Dianetic session, using the exact 10-step procedure, is he's getting the pre-clear to return and re-experience incidents that have happened to him in the past, and using some communication techniques helping him to get relief of those incidents. And you do that bit by bit. How long does it take? It depends on each person. Some people have had huge amounts of bad things happen to them. Some people have had small amounts of things that have happened to them. It depends. Some people have had huge amount of things happen to them, but they're very, very strong, so they're able to tackle it much more easily. So that's what auditing is, and that's what it does. When this stuff is cleared up, there are two stages that you can come to. One is an intermediate stage called release. Okay, and a release is a very good condition where you're feeling great. A lot of this stuff is handled. You're not completely cleared of it all, but you just feel great. And until it's all cleared up, that's when this clear state is arrived at. So, what am I saying to you? The source of your blues is you being stuck in the past. The reason you are stuck in the past is because you have a thing called the reactive mind holding you there. That reactive mind is not under your control. It gets triggered without your permission and without your knowledge by things in your environment. It does no good to keep changing environments because you'll have to keep changing for the rest of your life. You have to tackle the baggage that you have accumulated, and once that baggage has been tackled, once those painful experiences have been dealt with, you will experience a new lease of life. The end result is clear. So Dianetics is not something that you do on a day-to-day basis for 10 or 15 minutes. Oh, I've got to get up this morning and do my Dianetics, like you're doing a workout, you know, just like going to the gym. I'm going to do my Dianetics. It's not like that. Dianetics is about completely handling this till it's gone, done, dusted, move on with life, so that you don't have to do Dianetics again. Of course, you can learn to do it to help others, but once it's cleared up, it's cleared up. Of course, bad things might happen to you in the future, but once this stuff is cleared up, you're going to be much more able to handle that stuff, much more able to deal with it, so that things don't pull you down so easily, so people can't suppress you so easily. So when you have an upset with somebody, you don't hit the deck. Okay, so point is there's an end result. Now, what I'd like to do is, if you have any questions on any of the platforms, please feel free to pop them into the chat. So I'm going to summarize this for you very quickly, and then I'm going to show you what I've put together as a package to help you with your life going forward, okay? So what we went over is this. Number one is your goals, okay? Often when you hit barriers, you can sink down, but just try to do something about it, okay? And just keep working on that. Just do something, even if it's a small thing. Number 2, upsets with people. This can be tragic because people are part of our lives. And when we have upsets, they do need to be repaired. Okay, so the start off point is communication. Even if you send a text, a nice friendly text, okay? Number 3 is people putting you down, suppression. All I want you to do on that point is just be aware of it. Be aware that it's happening, okay? Even by just being aware of it, you can then decide what the best approach. Again, there's courses that we do on each one of these points so that you don't kind of get confused on it, okay? And the next point is general morale, just this general morale, lack of morale. And I went over taking a walk and production, okay? But the biggest, 100% most important thing that you have to handle, because if you don't handle this, the others are not stable. And that is your reactive mind and the package of pain from your past, okay? And that stuff, once cleared up, gives you back your life. And once you learn how to do it, you can help to give life back to an individual and help them to recover from their past. This is the only way I know on how to do it properly. Okay. Now, so what I have 2 questions coming in there. I'm going to answer those questions in a minute. Normally, what I do is at the end, I'll answer questions. And I have a couple of questions coming in there. Anybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, pop your questions in at the bottom, and I'd be happy to answer them for you, and in the best way I can. Okay. But what I want to do right now is I'm going to tell you what I would recommend as your next step, and then I'll answer those questions that have come in there on the chat. Okay. So I've put together this package for you, and it's basically the book. So the first thing I'm going to tell you to do and recommend strongly is get yourself a copy of the Dianetics book. Now, I am not a salesperson. I am technical. I'm a trained Dianetics counselor. I do this to help people, but still, the first step is education. So the first thing is the real source of unwanted behavior, thought, and emotions is explained fully in this book. This is going to explain exactly what's going on. Full discovery of the parts of the mind and how they work. You're going to sort out all this mumbo jumbo that you've heard out there about how the chemical imbalance in your brain is this, that, and the other, and this, that. There's so much confusing stuff out there. This is going to make it very simple. It's extremely important to understand how your mind works. And this book shows you the true facts. In book 3 of this book is the exact step-by-step therapy to fully use your mind to unlock your full potential. You read the book in sequence so that when you get to that, it clicks in very, very easily, and it's very easy to understand what you're doing. And if you need help on it, you can always contact us, and we can connect you up with an auditor or show you how to do it. We do seminars and different things. The book has been translated into 50 languages. So, yeah. I mean, I can't list them off at the top of my head, but you can normally get them in your own language, okay? And it's sent to you with free shipping. So, yeah, and I mean, there's 500 pages in this book, okay? It's got a beautiful glossary at the end for there's a couple of new words that you'll come across, but they're all explained very clearly at the back. And very beautiful book to read and very easy to understand. And as I said, you will come across some words you might not get, but they're all explained clearly at the back of the book. Okay, so now, that's the book. I'd also recommend, there's another booklet that I'm going to recommend tonight, and this is a special offer for tonight's webinar, okay? So that is this particular booklet here called Solutions for a Dangerous Environment. Now, I kind of showed you briefly what this is about. It's a small booklet, and it gives you simple things that you can do. Let me just see how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, there's 8 basics explained in this booklet with pictures, which show you simple things that you can do to help you to feel better, to handle a loss, to help you to recover from a loss, and to help another person to recover from a loss as well. Okay, and some really, really good stuff in that. So that is included as part of the package That image was up there a minute ago. I don't know. Oh, there it is again. Okay, so that's the actual book. Okay, so the price of those two books together is basically 25 euros. But if you get this tonight before the end of the webinar, which will be probably about 9:10, and the link is going to be going up, it's basically 20 euros. Okay, so that's the Dianetics book, which is 500 pages, and it's a fantastic book. You get the booklet that goes with that. It's normally 5 euros. It's sent to you for 20 euros, and it's free shipping, and it will be sent out ASAP. So there's going to be a link going up, and we've put one up there now. So that offer is going to be going on until the end of this webinar tonight, which is literally until the end of the questions and answers. So the more questions you ask me, the longer the offer stays up. Okay, that's how long it goes on. Yeah, so that's going to be that. And if you wanted to get outside of that, then the book itself is there available for you as well. Okay. Okay, so now I do want you to get a copy of the book because it gives you the correct data. It's not enough just to listen to me on a webinar. I can only cover some of the basics. Okay, the book contains everything, and this is why I recommend it to people, because the first step is always education, always. And like, for example, sometimes people come in and say, Vincent, I need a session, take me into auditing. But they haven't a clue what it's about. They don't know how it works. They don't even know why it works. So the first thing I normally tell the person is, listen, read the book, get some data, and then come back. And once you have a little bit of knowledge about it, the person is much, much better when they're in session because they know exactly what they're doing. Okay, so now, so there you go. Get those. Take the opportunity, get the book, and when you do, you'll have our email address, and you can ask us any questions, or if you need any help, or to find out about seminars coming up where you can connect up with an auditor, those will all be available to you. All right? Okay, so now I'm going to go over the questions that came up in the webinar. 1 second. Okay, and I've got a question here. I don't read out the messages that are sent to me directly, because or who it's from, basically, because it wasn't sent to everybody. I don't say the person's name. But anyway, this message came in to me: who can be an auditor? Who can be an auditor? Well, that is a good question. Number one, and this also applies to picking out an auditor, it should be somebody who wants to help others. It should be somebody who has some degree of literacy, okay, and can understand basics, some degree of education. It doesn't mean you have to have a 10-year college professor degree to do Dianetics. Anybody who can understand information and who can apply the basics can become an auditor. Anybody can become an auditor. And I'm recommending that everybody becomes an auditor, because it's the only way to really and truly help a person to dig themselves out of the past. Okay? The beauty of this book is that it teaches you how to become an auditor. In fact, just by getting the book and by reading it, book 1, book 2, and book 3, you can actually start auditing at home with a friend or family member. Once you've done that, if you want to do more, you can come to one of our seminars where we teach you an audio-visual exactly how to become an auditor. And you also twin you up with somebody in sessions. If you want to take it further, there's a course that we do where you can come in here and audit for as long as you want with somebody who's twinning with you. And then you can also become a professional auditor, which takes a little bit longer. Okay? So there's a whole range of different opportunities there, but the answer is really anybody can become an auditor, but there has to be that desire to help. If somebody doesn't have a desire to help, they're probably not going to want to do it anyway. Okay? So I hope that answers your question, and if you have any more, please let me know. Okay, so let's see any other questions. BJ, yeah, sorry. Is there any relation between what people call ego and the reactive mind? Now, when we get into this thing of ego, which is basically the person themselves, their own desires, these are psychology terms. And this subject of psychology has attempted to explain the mind. I've read about this before, but it's very complicated. It's very, very complicated. You start reading books on psychology, it kind of goes quite circular. Okay, and the counselings are often from psychology are based on not this. They're not based on this, basically. And I don't want to knock anything else. I believe that anything that helps somebody is better than having the person on drugs or doing something stupid. All right. So in terms of the difference between the ego and the blah blah blah, these are psychology terms which can be very, very confusing. Okay. And so to answer your question about the reactive mind, the ego has to do with the person and their own desires. It can be influenced by the reactive mind. So when you are talking to a person and the person has a certain desire to improve their life or go in a certain direction, it could be influenced by the reactive mind. But anything can be. And so I try to steer clear of these, trying to mix Dianetics with other subjects and other terms, because it's all cleared up in the book. It's all cleared up. This is all you need to know. All you need to know. Okay. I think very good. Oh yeah, I think you answered the question. The answer that I gave you was kind of the question you asked me. Is it correct to say that most people's goals are coming from the reactive mind? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Look, when this reactive mind is not affecting a person and they're thinking clearly, they usually put positive goals there. And look, every day we have to come up with goals. Like, you want to survive. You want to go and eat healthy. Okay, so let's say you have a goal, you want to eat healthy. Well, that's a very constructive goal. It's not necessarily the reactive mind telling you, oh, you have to eat healthy. Or if you want to, let's say, open up a community group to help your neighborhood, and that's your goal. Look, we can't say that that's influenced by the reactive mind. The reactive mind does affect goals, but usually constructive goals, positive goals, don't come from the reactive mind. Negative goals usually do. And of course, a person could have had an accident 20 years ago and somebody told them while he was unconscious, you need to be a boxer. You need to be boxing all your life. And the person's operating on that basis. So goals can be influenced by the reactive mind. It is true. But when we're talking about constructive and positive goals that come naturally to a person, it's not really the reactive mind. So I hope that answers your question, BJ. Yes, and where can you find about auditing session from end to end? It's book 3. So this book is separated into 3 sections. For anybody who doesn't have it, book 1 is basically the goal of man. And in this, it goes over the clear and why you're doing auditing in the first place. Book 2 is about the mind, how it works, how the mind affects the body, how 70% of body problems are stemming from the mind, how the mind affects your emotion, and how to prevent your problems from passing on to your kids, which is actually quite important. And then book 3, therapy, this gives you the full detailed sequence of things that you need to do. Now, people often say to me, Vincent, I just want to go straight to the therapy. Just tell me, show me the page. Tell me the page, Vincent. Tell me it now, quick. That's fine, except for the fact I prefer if people read every chapter up to that point, because it all builds on it. If you just send a person to book 3, chapter 5, which shows you the exact procedure, and I'm answering the question now, sometimes in there might be a term you didn't get which was explained earlier. So you're much better off reading the book from start to finish and then get to that point. But book 3, chapter 5 shows you the full procedure. Okay, so I hope that has answered your questions. Does anybody have any other questions? And let me ask you another one. This is for everybody on the platforms. Did anybody learn anything from the webinars or get anything out of it? Anybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram? You can pop it into the chat. Okay, folks. So we're coming to the end of the webinar. I want to tell you that this has been a pleasure for me to be here with you tonight and to go over this information. I do hope that anybody who's on the platforms, I've got Zoom in front of me, but anybody on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, do get a copy of the book, read it, and follow it up. get your opportunity to actually use the therapy and get yourself into auditing as soon as humanly possible. All right. For me, it's done great things. And look, if all this did was help you to improve your confidence in life, if all it did was help you to clear up to the past, it would be worth it. It would be worth it for those reasons alone. Okay, folks, so we're going to wrap up. Unless anybody has any other questions, we will say good night. If you have any questions about the book, let us know. That link is going to be up there. Maybe we'll leave it up there for another 10 minutes or so, okay? I'm going to be ending off the webinar, but the link is going to be there for another 10 minutes on the platforms, okay? So if you have any questions, you can email us, contact us. We'll be happy to help you out. We're looking for an example. Okay, good. So VJ, I'll ask somebody to reach out to you for that, for an example. I'll get somebody to reach out. We have an actual department for people just like you who want to get into auditing. That's a perfect question. So you want to get the procedure to get an example of it. So I will have somebody reach out to you for that, okay? Directly, by email, okay? Okay, so folks, I'll say goodnight to you all. Thanks a million for being here, for giving me your time, and for all your questions. Hope to see you at the next webinar. Invite all your friends and family, and thanks for listening. Okay, everybody, thanks very much. Bye for now.